Hey guys, so I'm in the greenhouse again today, and my never-ending quest to find the perfect heater has landed me kind of on a unique idea. This is a radiant heater. It's really simple to put together, only requires a few components, and it will put out a massive amount of heat. So whether it's an emergency or you need to heat a greenhouse like this, it works perfectly. So let's get started. I'll show you exactly how to put it together in less than 20 minutes. So guys, what you're going to need is a large size can. I'm thinking these are called #1 cans, but I can't remember. But you need one can that will fit easily inside of another. So depending on what size cans you have in your pantry, you can make any of these work. But again, you just need your primary can as being one of the largest. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is called a #1 size. So let's open this up, empty out the contents, and then we'll move on to assembling the rest of the heater. All right, so sometimes these cans are sprayed with a type of wax coating. So in your first burn, you may want to burn it outside just to burn off that coating. Also, you need to remove the outside of the can, the labeling, and also a lot of times these cans have just a small amount of glue. So you can remove that by either using your razor blade and scraping it off like this. You can see it's coming right off there. This dries out after a period of time, so you can get the glue off pretty easily, so it's not hard at all, or you can just let it burn off. But we're going to need another can, so this is our primary outside container to our original can, and we're just going to clean it up a little bit under the faucet. Now on the can that we're going to be placing inside like this, of course we're going to remove the top from it just like we did on our original can, but we're going to flip it over and have it sitting in our exterior can just like that, and we're going to drill a very small hole in the center of the can for refueling it. So just remember, you need to have two cans close in size and also close in height. As you can see, the height is very close there together. We're going to open up our second can, and there's two types of can openers you can use, at least the ones that I have around my greenhouse. You can use a very specialized type of can opener that will remove the top without leaving any sharp edges. So it kind of removes the entire top. I'll put a link to that one in the description, as well as my standard can opener. Now again, before I rinse it out, I'm just going to remove the label and any glue that might be holding the label on. Again, it's just a matter of just scraping the glue off there or letting it burn off. So either way, whatever you want to do. But I usually like to remove the glue so I don't have any strange odors in and around the greenhouse. So just scrape the glue off quickly, and then we'll do, as I said earlier, we're going to use this as our interior can. But again, we're placing that can upside down in our original larger can. Now we're going to be taking this back out, but I just wanted to show you how easily that fits down into the original can. And we're going to be drilling this out. Now I'm using a step bit, and I'll put a link to in the description to that specific type of bit, but it makes it a lot easier to drill into metal. Sometimes the other type of drill bit's a little bit harder to drill into. So as you can see, we're really close from the bottom of this can to the exterior lid of the exterior can, so we don't have this interior can sticking way up high. Okay, so if you've never used this type of drill bit, it's excellent for drilling into metals. It's a little bit easier to get into than some of the other type of drill bits. I have used wood bits on metal before, and it just definitely does not cut as clean of a hole into the bit. So just right in the center of the interior can, drill right down into the bottom. And the reason we're doing that is we want to be able to put our funnel into this area to refill once we burned up all of our fuel. Okay, so let's test it. I think it needs to be just a little bit larger. I do have some smaller funnels, but I just want to make sure that I can easily put this funnel into the can when I need to refill. So if I use a super small funnel, it'll take a little bit longer to refuel. Now it's a really tight fit there, so I'll just show you how it fits into that there. And so when we go to refuel, it makes it a lot easier. We don't have to worry about spilling it, so it goes right into our interior can without making too much of a mess when we go to refuel. I wanted to give you a wider view because I'm using some of this stainless steel mesh. I'll put a link in the description, but we need a circular piece of this, and might make it a little shorter. I don't know. It just depends on how, once I get through cutting it, but I need to cut a piece that will make a comfortable fit around the exterior of the interior can that makes any sense, and it will absolutely help radiating the heat out into the room. Now this is our interior can, and I'll show you how that's going to fit into there, and I had to cut it with a really good pair of scissors. So if your scissors are dull, you're going to have a hard time cutting through this stainless steel mesh, but As you can see, it fits around there, and there's still a little bit of a gap, and that's important too, and I'll show you in a minute why that is. Now, this piece right here is an exhaust vent that normally would fit on a roof of a home. It's made out of aluminum, and it can take extreme heat, but this will radiate heat into the room. If you've ever bought any of the patio heaters, you'll notice they have this dome type thing on the top of them. They're quite a bit larger than this, but it's the same principle as you're going to be radiating heat out into the area you want it to go into. So take a look in the description. The stainless steel mesh is there. This dome, if they're still selling it, I'll put a link in the description, but if you don't see it there, you can find these at hardware stores sometime around the hot water heaters and the exhaust vents that are normally mounted on the roof of homes. So you see that you've got a interior can. There's one more thing that we need to add to this can to make it work, but as you can see, this is kind of the overall look of it, but it puts out a tremendous amount of heat, and it will heat this greenhouse in a matter of minutes, even on a really cold day. So I've marked the 2 points on the carbon felt where I need to cut it by wrapping the interior can and letting about a quarter of an inch stick above the can, wrap it around, and I'll know exactly where I need to cut it, where I have it at the base of the can, and also at the total point where it totally 360s the interior can. So just remember, you need to make sure that it's just the right size, and you don't want it bunching up because it can make it hard to get into your interior, serving as the interior can, because it'll bunch too much. All right, so let me just check this and make sure it completely surrounds the can. And this carbon felt, you can stretch it a little bit, and so it fits a little bit better. So I don't want to make it too large. Let's wrap it around there and make sure it fits around the perimeter of the can. It's right at the base there. It comes up a little bit above the outside of the can, as you can see there. So that's going to act as our wick. It's very similar to a kerosene heater that's I purchased, and you have that wick just above the area where it's going to wick from beneath. So I'm going to talk about fuel as well in another part of this video, but fuel is another really important thing. The fuel has to be thin enough where it can be wicked. So if it's something super thick, it's not going to wick up properly. Something like a type of paraffin, I think, would be too thick. So or any type of vegetable oil, those would be too thick for the wick to work properly. So I'm just going to say, I'll show you the preferred material that I use, or the preferred fuel I use that I think that works perfectly. So as you can see, let's just slide that into the. You have to be a little careful when you do this, because it does have a tendency, it wants to bunch a little bit. So just kind of put it in there and do that twisting motion right there. And as you can see, you have your outer can. I took a little bit of a nick there out of the can, but it's out of the wick piece right there, so it's okay. But as you can see, it fits perfectly in there. Then we're going to wrap this. We'll have to take this back out. We'll wrap this around the carbon felt. So it goes from inner can to carbon felt, and then the outer part will be the stainless steel mesh. Now I've assembled everything, and I've zoomed out a little bit so you can see it a little better. So you have your outer can, you can see the inner can in there. I'm going to tilt it back. Our wick is about a quarter of an inch from the rim of the can, and then we have our exhaust vent that would normally be mounted on top of a house. We have that on the very top to help radiate some heat out and capture some heat so it just doesn't disperse into the room. So it acts as a really good radiate type of heater to the area it's sitting in, and the heat is just not float up to the ceiling. It gets really hot really quickly, and this right here will sometimes glow red. It gets so hot if it burns long enough. Now I'm going to take everything apart again, because there's one additional step we need to do to our interior can. I'll just take all that out. And so we want this to wick properly, and so this can, even though it's open at the bottom, sometimes the fuel is not going to wick properly. So we're going to put some additional holes in the sides of the can, not a lot, but just around maybe in every few inches around the perimeter, so that the fuel can properly make it to our carbon felt so it'll wick properly. We can also cover this with a coin, a piece of stainless steel, ball or something like that. I'm trying to think of what they call those, but anyways, you can cover this pretty easily. I have one around here. Something like this, just a paint can lid to a very small paint can. But the reason we do that is we don't want the flame coming out of the center here. We want the flame consistently coming from the outer area where the wick is. Now, as you can see, I put these about 1 inch apart, and you can put them all the way around the outside. I'd say maybe 3 or 4 different places around the outside, just to make sure that the wicking is taking place properly from your fuel to your carbon felt. So just remember that If it's not burning properly, that may be the reason that you don't have these exterior holes there that allow the wicking process to take place. So just remember that might be one step that you may have forgotten if you've assembled everything and you're not getting a good flame. Notice one thing I will absolutely say is that you need a good pair of leather gloves when assembling this and working with it, because it gets super heated. So just remember that you need to make sure good pair of leather gloves so you don't burn your hands. Also, when you go to refuel it, you'll need to take the top off, and you can get in from this backside. If you leave the proper enough gap there, you can put your funnel in there and refuel. So just remember, you don't have to have this necessarily on it when you first go to refuel it. Now I'm going to talk for a second about two of my favorite fuels to use. This Clean Heat is a type of K1 kerosene. It's very thin, it easily wicks, and it works really well with any type of wick. But I actually prefer the denatured alcohol. It's burns cleanly and doesn't put off any fumes or vapors. As I always say, no matter what type of fuel you're using or where you're using this at, you need to have a smoke alarm, a carbon monoxide detector, a small fire extinguisher. You need to have all that on hand, and don't leave this unattended. So just make sure that if you are using something like this, make sure it's not around kids or pets, because it could get knocked over. But there's some different ways you can use it, like putting it inside of a kitchen sink, so it'd be safer if it does tip over, if the sink is stainless steel, on top of a stove or an unused fireplace as well. Now I'm going to use two separate funnels to refuel this. I've got one funnel that's going into the actual interior can, and then I'm going to use a second funnel on the outside to funnel our fuel into the first one. So this is a little bit of a hassle to get it refueled. The first one of these I only made this stainless steel mesh just above the top of the interior funnel, so it was a little bit easier to refill. But this one, I'm really wanting it to be a lot higher so it'll radiate more heat out into the greenhouse. So again, just depending on how high you want your stainless steel, you can adjust it there. I've made it exceptionally high, but you could make it where there's just a very small gap, so you'd be a lot closer to the funnel when you go to refuel it. Another thing that's really important to remember is when you do go to refuel this, make sure it is completely cooled down and the flame is completely out. Okay, so I finished refueling it. I'm guessing it's about 75% full. I would recommend doing it either half or maybe below in your first burn. Also, I've put in the smaller paint can lid there, so the interior hole is covered, our refueling port, and so the only place that fuel should be coming to the top is through the wicking area around the perimeter of the can. Now, one recommendation I would make is when you first burn it, if your wick is not wicked up enough fuel, you can add something like rubbing alcohol and just squirting it through the stainless steel mesh, and it allows that heat to pull the fuel up to the top. So just give it that opportunity to start wicking properly. But once it does start wicking, this thing will start working great and putting out a lot of heat wherever you're at, room, greenhouse, outdoors, camping trip, small tent. You could use it anywhere that you need some instant heat very quickly. All right, so let's do a temperature test here. I'm going to do it on the wire mesh or the stainless steel mesh. I'm hoping you can see that there. 550, 600 degrees. The can itself, quite cool to the touch, so you don't have to worry about burning your hand in the initial stages, although the can could get hot over time, so I'd recommend you be careful there. The top piece of aluminum there, not too bad, under 200 degrees. This piece right here where the flame is licking the inside of the can, about 268, 270. So a lot of heat being generated around the screen. So the screen really helps radiate heat out into the room, and also the top of we've added to looks kind of like the old-fashioned style patio heaters. That's helping capture some of the heat and push it out into the room. All right, so I've allowed it to burn for a solid 30 minutes, and also the reason the flame is not quite as blue as it would normally be, indicating is a little bit more pure fuel, is that I did add some of the rubbing alcohol to the top to allow some of that fuel to be wicked up a little bit quicker, so I wouldn't have to wait for it to completely absorb into the carbon felt. So anyways, this is a solid 30-minute burn, and it has put out quite a bit of heat into the greenhouse. So guys, there you have it. It's a radiant heater that puts out a lot of heat. It's of course a little bit more top heavy than some of my other heaters, so again, you want to be careful around children and pets, but this thing is putting out a lot of heat now, and I can really tell the difference when I went outside to wash my hands, came back in, and the greenhouse is quite a bit warmer. So making one of these is super simple. Look in the description, and I'll put a lot of links to the things you may not be able to find normally, but like I said, these may or may or may not be still being sold online, so you can check your local hardware stores. It is a 4-inch vent that you would normally see on a roof. So it's usually around the hot water heaters and everything like that. I think our fuel is starting to get low, and it's also starting to change over to a little bit more of a blue flame, so it's a little bit harder to see. Now I wanted to give you a close-up of the stainless steel mesh. Now we've burned off the rubbing alcohol, and now we're completely burning nothing but the denatured alcohol, and you're starting to see more of just a blue flame there. So it's definitely putting out a lot of heat, a cleaner burn, a safer burn, and so I would recommend the denatured alcohol as far as a safety factor. Remember, you got to have all the safety equipment and the detection equipment to make sure that you don't have a serious accident doing something like this. So again, this would be a great emergency heater, camping heater, greenhouse heater, but just remember, you got to follow those common sense and basic safety ideas that I've put into the video. Now there you have it, one final close-up of how hot it's gotten. That stainless steel is just red hot and is putting out quite a bit of heat. So as you can see, once you get it to working, it's going to work great in whatever size room you have it in, whether you're using it on a camping trip, emergency power outage, greenhouse, whatever you're using it for. Once it starts working, it's going to work great for you. Now, after an hour-long burn, you can see that it's still putting out a lot of heat. The stainless steel is red hot, and a lot of people always ask me in the comments, how long will it burn? Well, there's a lot of factors there. The purity of the fuel and also the size of the cans. If it's a very small can, obviously it's going to burn for a shorter amount of time. If you're using something like the big pineapple juice cans, and if you created a lot larger heater, it's going to burn for a lot longer time. So remember, it's all about fuel purity and the reservoir where you have your fuel. So guys, if you have a question about this video, any previous video, I hope you'll become a public subscriber first. I try to answer those questions first because I do get so many questions. Also, if you want to help the channel grow, please become a member of the Patreon. That greatly helps me out, and it encourages me to know that somebody's out there that really enjoys the video. So guys, I appreciate you watching, and have a great day.